The key turned smoothly in the lock, just like it had 1,000 times before. But tonight felt different. Michael Chen stood in the doorway of his own home, rolling suitcase beside him, and felt the wrongness settle into his bones like winter frost. The flight from Singapore had landed early. A mechanical issue resolved faster than expected. A tailwind that shaved an hour off the journey, and suddenly he was home 24 hours ahead of schedule. He'd imagined Sarah's face lighting up when he walked through the door. He'd imagined his son David calling out, "Dad's home," like he used to when he was younger, before marriage, before the changes that Michael couldn't quite name but felt everywhere. The house was lit. Every window glowed with warm yellow light, the kind that should mean family, safety, home. But the silence was all wrong. Michael closed the door behind him, the click echoing through the foyer. No footsteps, no voices, no television murmur or kitchen clatter. Just that silence, thick and suffocating, broken only by something that made his chest tighten. Sobbing. Soft, broken, the kind of crying that comes when you've already screamed yourself hoarse and have nothing left but tears. He dropped his suitcase and moved toward the sound, his dress shoes clicking against the hardwood floor. The living room was dark except for a single lamp in the corner, and there, curled on the couch like a child trying to make herself disappear, was Sarah, his wife of 32 years, the woman who had stood beside him through his father's death, through business failures, through David's rebellious teenage years, the strongest person he knew, and she was shaking. Her mascara had run in dark rivers down her cheeks. Her hands clutched a tissue that had been shredded into confetti. She didn't even look up when he entered, lost in whatever private hell had consumed her. "Sarah?" His voice came out rough, frightened. "Sarah, what happened?" She flinched at his voice, then her head snapped up. For a moment, confusion crossed her face, as if she couldn't quite place him, couldn't understand why he was there. Then her eyes filled with fresh tears. "Michael," she whispered, and the words sounded like both a prayer and a condemnation. "You weren't supposed to be back until tomorrow." "The flight came in early. Sarah, talk to me. What's going on? Are you hurt?" He crossed to her, knelt beside the couch, reached for her hand. She let him take it, but her fingers were ice cold and trembling. She tried to speak, her mouth opening and closing, but nothing came out except a small broken sound. She raised one shaking hand and pointed vaguely toward the back of the house, toward the kitchen. That's when Michael heard it. Laughter. Not gentle laughter, not the comfortable chuckle of family gathered around a dinner table. This was loud, performative, the kind of laughter that comes at someone else's expense. Cruel laughter that echoed through the walls of his home like an invasion. And above it all, clear and unmistakable, he heard his son's voice. "I'm telling you, she's just sensitive. Everything is a drama with her. You say one thing, and suddenly it's the end of the world." More laughter. Other voices, voices Michael recognized with a sinking feeling in his stomach. David's in-laws, the family of his daughter-in-law, Jessica, the family that had never liked him and Sarah, who had made that clear from the moment David and Jessica had started dating 5 years ago. "What did he do?" Michael asked, his voice dropping to something dangerous, something he usually kept locked away deep inside. "Sarah, what did David do?" She finally met his eyes, and what he saw there broke something in him. Not just pain, not just hurt, humiliation, the kind of deep, soul-crushing shame that comes when someone you love betrays you in front of people who already look down on you. "He embarrassed me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "In front of them. Michael. He stood there and told them things, private things, things about me, about us. And they laughed. They all laughed. And he enjoyed it." Her voice broke completely on that last word, and she curled back into herself, hiding her face in her hands. Michael felt something cold and sharp sliding through his chest. His son, his only child, the boy he'd taught to ride a bike, to throw a baseball, to be a man. That boy had done this, to his own mother. Another burst of laughter came from the kitchen, louder this time, and Michael recognized the particular cadence of his son's voice, telling another story, playing to his audience. Michael stood up slowly. He looked down at his wife, broken on their couch, and made a decision. "Stay here," he said quietly. "I'll handle this." "Michael, don't," Sarah said, reaching for him, but her voice was so weak, so defeated. "Just let it go. They'll leave soon." "No," Michael said, and the word was final. Absolute. "They won't." He walked toward the kitchen, and with each step, the laughter grew louder. He could hear individual voices now. Jessica's mother, Brenda, her distinctive nasal laugh cutting through everything else. Jessica's older brother, Marcus, whose disdain for Michael's middle-class background had always been barely concealed. Jessica's father, Richard, who had never missed an opportunity to mention his country club membership, his investment portfolio, his connections, and David. Always David at the center, desperate for their approval in a way that made Michael's heart ache and his anger burn. Michael paused at the kitchen door, just out of sight, and listened. "So, there she is," David was saying, his voice animated, confident, standing in the middle of the grocery store, and she's freaking out because they're out of the specific brand of pasta she needs. I mean, completely losing it. And I'm like, "Mom, it's pasta. It's literally pasta." But no, she's got to have this one brand because it reminds her of her childhood or something. "Oh my God," Brenda said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Is she always like that?" "You have no idea," David said, and Michael could hear the smile in his voice. "Everything is a production. Everything has some deep emotional meaning. She cries over everything. Hallmark commercials, old photos, the weather. It's exhausting." More laughter. Michael's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "And your father just lets her get away with it?" Richard asked, his tone suggesting he would never be so weak. "Dad's just as bad," David said. "He babies her, treats her like she's made of glass. They're both stuck in this old-fashioned, overly emotional way of thinking. You know, that generation, they don't get how things work now." "Well, you're lucky you have Jessica," Brenda said. "At least she comes from a family that understands the real world." "Don't I know it," David said. "Honestly, sometimes I think I learned more about being an adult from you guys than I ever did from my own parents." Michael took a deep breath, steadying himself, and then stepped into the kitchen. The room went silent instantly, like someone had hit a mute button on reality itself. It was almost comical how every face turned toward him simultaneously, frozen in various expressions of shock and guilt. 7 people caught in the act of something they knew was wrong, but had convinced themselves didn't matter. The kitchen was a disaster. Wine bottles littered the counter, 3 empty, 2 half full. Appetizer plates were scattered across the island, cheese and crackers and fancy spreads that Sarah must have set out hours ago when she still thought this was going to be a nice evening. Wine glasses with lipstick stains, crumbs everywhere, the detritus of a party that had been going on for hours while his wife cried alone in the next room, her mascara running, her heart breaking. Marcus was leaning against the refrigerator, a smirk still lingering on his face despite the sudden tension. Brenda had frozen mid-sip, her wine glass suspended halfway to her lips, her expression morphing from amusement to alarm. Richard sat at the breakfast bar trying to arrange his features into something neutral and failing. Jessica's cousin, what was her name? Amanda? Looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. And 2 of Marcus's friends, guys David had been trying to befriend for months, stood near the back door looking guilty as hell. David stood at the kitchen island, a glass of wine in his hand, red wine, Sarah's favorite bottle that she'd been saving for a special occasion. Michael recognized the label. It was from their anniversary trip to Napa Valley 5 years ago. Sarah had bought 2 bottles, drank one on their last night there, and saved the second for when we have something really wonderful to celebrate. And David had opened it. To drink with people who mocked his mother. His son's face was still flushed with the pleasure of being the center of attention, of making people laugh, of feeling important and clever. He saw his father and didn't even have the grace to look ashamed. Instead, his eyebrows raised in mild surprise, as if Michael were an unexpected guest at a party rather than a man who owned this house, who paid the mortgage, who had every right to be here. "Oh," David said, setting down his glass with an audible clink that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. "Dad, you're back early. Didn't expect you until tomorrow night." There was no apology in his voice, no concern, no, "Is everything okay?" Or, "Did something happen?" Just mild surprise and a hint of annoyance, as if Michael's early arrival had inconvenienced him. Michael didn't respond immediately. He looked around the kitchen, meeting each person's eyes in turn, letting the silence stretch and grow uncomfortable. Marcus shifted his weight from foot to foot. Brenda finally set down her wineglass, the clink of crystal on granite absurdly loud. Richard cleared his throat, that pompous sound he always made when he was about to say something he thought was important. Michael didn't respond. He looked around the kitchen, meeting each person's eyes in turn. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Brenda's smile faltered. Richard cleared his throat. Jessica, sitting at the breakfast nook, had gone pale. "Michael," Richard said, forcing joviality into his voice. "Welcome home. We were just keeping the kids company." "I heard," Michael said quietly. His voice was calm, controlled, but everyone in the room seemed to sense the danger underneath. "I heard everything." David's confidence wavered for just a moment. "Dad, we were just talking." "You were just talking," Michael repeated slowly. "About your mother, my wife, The woman who gave birth to you, who raised you, who sat up with you every night when you had pneumonia at 7 years old, who sold her grandmother's ring to help pay for your college when we came up short. That's who you were just talking about? It was just a story, Dad. Don't make it into a big deal. Your mother is in the next room crying so hard she can barely breathe, Michael said, his voice dropping even lower, more dangerous. You think that's not a big deal? She cries over everything, David said, a flash of defiance crossing his face. You know that. She's too sensitive. I wasn't being mean, I was just being honest. You were being cruel, Michael said, in front of people who don't respect us, people who have never respected us. Now hold on, Richard started, standing up. There's no need for accusations. Michael's eyes snapped to him. Sit down and be quiet. This is between me and my son. Something in Michael's voice made Richard sit back down immediately. David's jaw tightened. Dad, you're embarrassing me. Am I? Michael asked. Am I embarrassing you? How do you think your mother felt? Being mocked in her own home? Having her private struggles turned into entertainment? Jesus, I was just venting. Everyone vents about their parents. Not like this, Michael said. Not with cruelty. Not for approval from people who don't matter. They're Jessica's family, David said, his voice rising. They matter to me. More than your own mother? Silence. Michael reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He'd been thinking about this moment for the last 60 seconds, running through options, weighing consequences. Now he knew what he had to do. Give me your phone, he said to David, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. What? No. Dad, that's private. Give me your phone, Michael repeated, taking a step closer. Or I will take it from you. And trust me, David, you don't want me to do that. There was something in his father's voice that David had never heard before. Not anger. Michael had been angry before. This was colder than anger. This was the sound of something breaking, of a decision being made that couldn't be unmade. David's hand went automatically to his pocket, his fingers wrapping around his phone protectively. Dad, this is ridiculous. You're embarrassing everyone. I'm embarrassing everyone, Michael's voice dropped even lower. I walk into my own kitchen and find you entertaining guests by mocking your mother while she sobs in the next room, and I'm the one embarrassing everyone? Michael, Richard started, standing up and trying to inject authority into his voice. I think everyone's a bit emotional right now. Why don't we all just take a breath and... Sit down and be quiet, Michael said without even looking at him. This is between me and my son. You're just an audience member who's about to find out what happens in the final act. Something in Michael's tone made Richard sit back down immediately, his mouth snapping shut. David's face had gone pale. His fingers were still wrapped around his phone, but his grip was loosening. He was starting to realize, perhaps for the first time that evening, that he'd made a terrible miscalculation. The phone, David. Now. Slowly, reluctantly, David pulled his phone from his pocket and handed it over. It was already unlocked. He'd been showing people something earlier, some meme or video that had made them laugh. Michael took it and started scrolling through the messages. He knew where to look. He'd seen the way David's phone had been constantly pinging during their last few family dinners, the way he'd smile at certain messages and angle the screen away when Michael or Sarah tried to glance at it. He found the group chat within seconds. It was called The Real Family. The name alone made Michael's blood boil. Below it were dozens of messages, hundreds maybe, all recent. He started scrolling, and with each message he read, something inside him grew colder and harder. He started reading, his voice steady and clear, projecting to every corner of the kitchen. Each word landed like a physical blow. From David, 3 days ago. Had to listen to another one of Mom's stories about the old days. I swear she tells the same 5 stories on repeat, like a broken record. I just nod and smile and think about literally anything else until she's done. David's face had gone from pale to completely white. His mouth opened as if to speak, but no sound came out. Dad, stop, he finally managed to whisper. Michael continued, his voice unwavering, relentless. From Brenda. OMG, that's so annoying. My mother-in-law was exactly the same way. Some people never learn to move on. They get stuck in the past and just drag everyone down with them. Brenda's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the tile floor. No one moved to clean it up. Red wine spread across the white grout like blood. Dad, please, David said, and now there was panic in his voice. He could see where this was going, could see his carefully constructed image crumbling. But Michael was merciless. From David. The worst part is, Dad acts like everything she says is fascinating. like she's telling us the secrets of the universe instead of rambling about her boring childhood. They're both stuck in 1985. It's pathetic. Jessica made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Her hands flew to her mouth. She'd known her husband complained about his parents, but this level of contempt? This cruelty? From Marcus. Dude, you need to establish boundaries. Show them who's in charge now. You're a grown man, not a little boy who needs mommy's approval anymore. Marcus's smirk had completely vanished. He was staring at the floor, his face red, suddenly very interested in the pattern of the tile. From David. Michael continued, his voice getting quieter, which somehow made it more frightening. You're right. I think tonight's a good night for that. They're both so predictable. I know exactly what will happen. I'll make a comment about Mom being emotional. She'll get upset, watch her cry, watch Dad get all protective. It's like a script. They play their roles perfectly every time. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Michael looked up from the phone and met his son's eyes. David looked like he was going to be sick. A script? Michael said softly, and the words sounded like both a prayer and a condemnation. You planned this. You told them you were going to make your mother cry. You predicted our reactions like we're characters in a play you're directing. You turned our family into your entertainment. Dad, it wasn't like that. I mean, it was, but not the way you're making it sound. Then how was it? Explain it to me. Make me understand how my son, the boy I taught to ride a bike and throw a baseball, the boy I held when he had nightmares, turned into someone who gets pleasure from planning his mother's humiliation. David's mouth opened and closed several times. He looked around the kitchen, perhaps hoping someone would come to his defense, but everyone was avoiding eye contact. Brenda was picking up pieces of her broken wine glass with trembling hands. Marcus had backed toward the door. Richard looked like he was contemplating whether he could somehow escape without being noticed. Keep going, Michael said, holding up the phone. There's more. So much more. Should I read the part where you make fun of your mother's anxiety, or the part where you laugh about her fear of flying, or maybe the part where you share intimate details about our financial struggles that were told to you in confidence? Please, David whispered, please stop. Why? You didn't stop. You kept going, message after message, day after day. You built an entire community around mocking us. You found people who would validate your cruelty, and you fed off their approval like a drug. Michael scrolled further. Oh, here's an interesting one. From last week. David. Mom called me crying because she saw a photo of me as a kid and started getting nostalgic. Couldn't get her off the phone for 30 minutes. I had the game on. I literally put the phone down and she just kept talking. I didn't even need to respond. Sarah appeared in the doorway behind Michael. She must have heard enough to overcome her paralysis. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes red and swollen. But there was something else there now besides pain. Anger. Finally, anger. You put the phone down, she said, her voice raw and broken. When I called you crying, you just put the phone down and let me talk to emptiness. David spun around at the sound of her voice. Mom, Don't, she said, holding up one shaking hand. Don't you dare say you didn't mean it. Don't you dare tell me I'm being too emotional. You planned this. You told them you were going to make me cry tonight. You made it a game. Mom, please, if you would just let me explain. Explain what? Her voice was rising, getting stronger through the pain. Explain how you turned every private moment we shared into a joke. Explain how you took the stories I told you about my childhood, about my parents who died before you were born, and you laughed about them with strangers. They're not strangers, they're Jessica's family. They are strangers, Sarah's voice cracked. I don't know them, they don't know me, but they know everything about me now, don't they? Every fear, every insecurity, every private struggle. Because you told them. Because you made me into a punchline. We didn't mean anything by it, Brenda said weakly. It was just chat, just blowing off steam. You, Michael said, his voice cutting across her excuse like a knife, are in my home. You watched my son humiliate his mother tonight. You laughed, you encouraged it, and you think just blowing off steam makes it acceptable? No one answered. Michael looked back at David, his son, the child he'd been so proud of, the boy who was supposed to be better than him, to go further, to be stronger. Pack your things, Michael said quietly. What? Pack your things, tonight. You're leaving. Dad, you can't be serious. Do I look like I'm joking? Michael's voice was ice. You don't live here anymore. This is my home. This is my home, Michael corrected. Your mother's home. You lost the right to call it yours when you decided to destroy her for entertainment. Michael, Richard said, standing again, let's not be hasty. Family arguments happen. Everyone says things they don't mean. He meant it, Michael said, not looking away from David. Every word, every laugh. He meant it, and he enjoyed it. Where am I supposed to go? David asked, and now there was panic in his voice. Honestly, I don't care. Stay with your real family, Michael gestured to the others. The ones who matter so much to you, the ones whose approval is worth destroying your mother for. Mr. Chen, Jessica said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was small, frightened. Please. He made a mistake. He'll apologize. He can apologize, Michael said. From somewhere else. He's not staying here tonight. You can't just kick him out, David said, finding some of his anger again. I'm your son. You can't just throw me away. You threw your mother away first, Michael said. You decided she was disposable, that her feelings didn't matter, that her dignity was worth less than a few laughs from people who probably talk about you the same way behind your back. He saw the words land, saw the recognition flicker across the faces of the in-laws. Of course they talked about David when he wasn't there. That's what people like them did. I want all of you out, Michael said, raising his voice for the first time. Now, get out of my house. Dad, David started, reaching toward him. Do not touch me, Michael said, stepping back. Do not speak to me. Pack your essentials. You have 20 minutes. Anything else you can arrange to pick up later. Michael, this is crazy, Brenda said. You're overreacting. He's your son. You can't just abandon him over some messages. Michael turned to her, and whatever she saw in his face made her shrink back. You don't get to tell me about my son, he said. You, who encouraged him to disrespect his mother, you who turned our family's private moments into gossip. You get out of my house right now, or I will call the police and have you removed. The kitchen erupted in chaos. Richard started making threats about lawyers. Marcus grabbed his coat. Brenda protested loudly about how unreasonable this was. Through it all, David stood frozen, looking at his father like he was seeing him for the first time. Jessica started crying, quietly, in the corner. Michael walked to the front door and opened it wide. Cold November air rushed in, cutting through the warmth of the house. Out, he said simply. All of you. They filed out, still protesting, still making excuses. Richard tried to stay behind to argue, but one look from Michael sent him scrambling after the others. Within 5 minutes, the house was silent again, except for the sound of David's footsteps upstairs, moving frantically from room to room. Michael closed the front door and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. He could hear Sarah crying upstairs now, probably having heard everything. He wanted to go to her, but first he had to see this through. David came down the stairs 15 minutes later with a duffel bag and his laptop case. His face was red, his eyes wet but defiant. I hope you're happy, David said. You just destroyed our family. No, Michael said. You did that. I'm just making sure your mother doesn't have to watch it happen anymore. She'll forgive me. She always does. Maybe, Michael said, but I won't. Not until you understand what you've done. Not until you actually feel it. David's face crumpled for just a moment, the mask slipping, but he caught himself. Fine, I'll stay with Jessica's parents. They actually appreciate me. Good luck with that, Michael said, and opened the door again. David walked out into the night, and Michael closed the door behind him. He stood there for a long moment, listening to the sound of a car starting, driving away. His son. Gone. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last, and found Sarah sitting on the edge of their bed, staring at nothing. Is he gone? She asked. Yes. Michael, maybe that was too harsh. He's our son. He's our only child. I know who he is, Michael said, sitting beside her. I also know what he did, what he's been doing. Sarah, he planned this. He planned to hurt you. He told them he was going to make you cry tonight. This wasn't a slip of the tongue. This was deliberate. She turned to look at him, and fresh tears spilled down her already raw cheeks. Why? Why would he do that? I don't know, Michael said honestly. Maybe he's angry about something. Maybe he's trying to impress them. Maybe he's just changed in ways we didn't want to see. But I know one thing. I will not watch him destroy you. I will not sit by while our son turns you into a joke for people who have never respected us. Sarah leaned against him, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding her while she cried. Outside, the November wind picked up, rattling the windows, but inside, for the first time that night, there was a strange kind of peace. The first text came at 2 a.m. Michael was lying awake in bed, Sarah finally asleep beside him, her breathing still occasionally hitching from hours of crying. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen lighting up the dark room. David. Dad? I'm sorry, can I come home? Michael stared at the message for a long time. Part of him wanted to say yes immediately, to have his son back under his roof where he could protect him, guide him, fix whatever had broken between them. But he thought about Sarah's face, about the cruelty in those messages, about the laughter in his kitchen. He typed slowly, "Not yet." The response came almost immediately. "Dad, please, I made a mistake, Michael. It wasn't a mistake. Mistakes are accidents. What you did was a choice. David, I didn't mean to hurt Mom that much, Michael. You told them you were going to make her cry. You planned it. That's not meaning to." No response after that. Michael set the phone down and closed his eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. 3 days passed in a strange, hollow silence. Sarah moved through the house like a ghost, going through the motions of daily life, but clearly somewhere else in her mind. She cooked meals they barely ate. She stared at David's empty chair at breakfast. She picked up her phone 100 times to call him, then set it back down. Michael went to work, but his mind wasn't there. He kept thinking about his son, wondering where he was staying, whether he was eating properly, whether he was safe. But every time he thought about calling, he remembered those messages. Watch her cry. Watch him get all protective. It's like a script. On the 4th day, Jessica called. Michael almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Chen?" Her voice was shaking. Wrong. "Mr. Chen, I need to talk to you. Can we meet, please? Just 30 minutes. I have something you need to see." They met at a coffee shop near the university where Jessica taught. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She had her laptop with her, clutching it like a life raft. "Thank you for coming," she said as Michael sat down. "I wasn't sure you would." "What is this about, Jessica?" She opened her laptop without preamble, turning the screen toward him. "I found something. Another group chat. One that I wasn't supposed to see. David doesn't know I have access to this account." Michael looked at the screen and felt his stomach drop. Another group chat. This one was called Breaking Free. The members were David, Marcus, Richard, and 2 other names Michael didn't recognize. "Start from the beginning," Jessica said quietly, her finger hovering over the trackpad. 2 months ago. Just read it." Michael started reading, and with each message, something inside him grew colder. "David. Need advice? Parents getting worse? Mom's neediness is suffocating. Dad backs her up on everything. I'm 29, and they still treat me like I'm 12. Marcus. Classic boomer parents. Think the world revolves around their feelings. David. Exactly. And Jessica's too nice to say anything, but I know it bothers her too. Richard. Son, you need to establish dominance. Show them you're the man now, that their way of doing things is over. David. How? Richard. Public humiliation works wonders. Make her look foolish in front of people she wants to impress. Break that emotional stranglehold she has on you. Michael felt sick. He looked up at Jessica, who had tears streaming down her face. Keep reading, she whispered. The messages continued, escalating. Plans to undermine Sarah's confidence, strategies to make Michael look weak and old-fashioned, discussions about how to retrain his parents to respect his authority. But it got worse. David, sometimes I think it would be easier if they just weren't around. Marcus. Dark dude. David. Not like that. Just like they could move to Florida or something. Get out of my life. Stop judging every decision. Unknown user 47. They're probably judging because you're doing well and they're not. Jealousy is a powerful thing. David. That's what I think too. Dad's business is struggling. Mom never had a career. They see me succeeding and it kills them. Michael closed his eyes. His business wasn't struggling. It was stable, comfortable. And Sarah had chosen to stay home to raise David, a decision they'd made together, a sacrifice she'd made willingly. There's more, Jessica said, from this week, after the fight. She scrolled down, and Michael read messages from the night he'd kicked David out. David, Dad actually kicked me out. Can you believe that? Over some jokes. Richard, told you he was weak, emotional, can't handle reality. David, I thought he'd back down. He's never stood up to me like that before. Marcus, that's because you finally pushed too far. You exposed his wife as the basket case she is, and he couldn't handle the truth. David, maybe you're right. Maybe I was doing them a favor, showing them how ridiculous they look to normal people. Unknown user 47. You're better off without them, man. Build your own family. Let the old guard fade away. David. That's what Jessica's family is for. Real adults who understand how the world works. Jessica made a sound like a wounded animal. I didn't know, she said. Mr. Chen, I swear to God, I didn't know any of this existed. I found this account by accident. He was logged in on our home computer, and I saw a notification pop up. When I read these messages, I couldn't believe this was the man I married. Michael couldn't speak. He kept reading, message after message, weeks of planning, of manipulation, of calculated cruelty. His son had become someone he didn't recognize, someone he wasn't sure he'd ever known at all. What do you want me to do with this? He finally asked. Jessica wiped her eyes. I want you to show Mrs. Chen. I want her to know the truth, all of it, because she needs to understand that this wasn't just a bad night or a mistake or him being influenced by my family. This is who he's become, and I can't... Mr. Chen, I can't stay married to someone like this. Michael looked up sharply. You're leaving him? I have to, Jessica said, and there was steel in her voice now, underneath the tears. I thought he was just going through something, a phase, but this is calculated, this is cruel. And if he can do this to his own parents, the people who loved him unconditionally his whole life, what will he eventually do to me? She closed the laptop and slid it across the table. Take screenshots of everything. Send them to yourself. Then give this back to me so I can return it before he notices it's gone. He's at work right now. I have maybe an hour. Michael took the laptop and started taking screenshots, his hands moving automatically while his mind struggled to process what he'd learned. This wasn't just about one night of bad judgment. This was systematic, planned. His son had been trying to break his mother's spirit for months. When he finished, he handed the laptop back. Jessica stood up to leave, then paused. Mr. Chen? My family. They're not good people. I've always known that, but I thought they were just snobs, you know? Elitist but harmless. I didn't realize they were actively cruel until I saw how they treated you and Mrs. Chen. I'm sorry. I should have said something years ago. You were trying to keep peace in your marriage, Michael said quietly. I understand that. It was still wrong. She picked up her laptop. I filed for divorce this morning. David doesn't know yet. My lawyer says I need to be out of our apartment before I serve him papers. I'm moving back to my own place tomorrow. Just thought you should know. She left, and Michael sat alone with his coffee and his phone full of devastating screenshots, trying to figure out how to tell his wife that their son's betrayal went so much deeper than they'd thought. He found Sarah in the garden when he got home, pulling weeds even though it was almost November and everything was dying anyway. She looked up when she heard his footsteps, hope and fear warring in her expression. Did you see David? She asked. No, Jessica. Oh, the hope died. How is she? Filing for divorce. Sarah's hand stilled in the dirt. What? Can you come inside? I need to show you something. It's not good, Sarah. It's really not good. They sat at the kitchen table, the same kitchen where David had held court while his mother cried rooms away. Michael pulled out his phone and handed it to her. Start from the top, he said. Read it all. I'll be right here. He watched her face as she read. Confusion first, then hurt, then disbelief, then a kind of numb horror that settled into her features like frost settling on glass. She scrolled for 20 minutes, not speaking, barely breathing. When she finally set the phone down, she looked at him with eyes that had aged a decade. He hates me, she said simply. No. Michael, you read it. He thinks I'm pathetic, needy, suffocating. He's embarrassed by me, by us. He thinks a lot of things that aren't true, Michael said. He's been influenced by people who see love as weakness and compassion as foolishness. He said it would be easier if we weren't around. He said a lot of things he shouldn't have said. Michael took her hands. Sarah, I need you to hear me. This isn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. You loved our son. You sacrificed for him. You gave him everything. The fact that he can't see that, can't appreciate it, that's his failure, not yours. But I must have done something, she said, her voice breaking. Children don't turn on their parents like this without a reason. Maybe I was too emotional. Maybe I did rely on him too much. Maybe... Stop, Michael said firmly. Stop doing that. Stop blaming yourself for his choices. You were a good mother. You are a good mother. What he's become? That's on him, and on the people who encouraged him to see love as something to escape from instead of something to cherish. Sarah pulled her hands away and wrapped them around herself. I keep thinking about when he was little, when he used to crawl into bed with us during thunderstorms, When he'd save his best stories from school to tell me at dinner? When did that boy disappear? When did he become someone who could do this? I don't know, Michael admitted. Maybe gradually. Maybe all at once. But Sarah, we can't save him from himself. We can't make him be the person we remember. All we can do is protect ourselves and hope that someday he wakes up and realizes what he's lost. They sat in silence for a long time, the autumn light fading outside their windows, the house that had once been full of laughter and love now feeling like a mausoleum for a family that no longer existed. What do we do now? Sarah asked finally. We live our lives, Michael said. We heal. We remember that we are more than his parents. We're people who deserve respect and dignity and love. And if David ever figures that out, if he ever genuinely wants to make amends, then we'll decide if we're ready to let him back in. And if he doesn't? Michael thought about his son, about the boy in the photos on their mantel and the stranger in those text messages. Then we mourn what could have been and move forward anyway. Sarah nodded slowly, then stood up and walked to the window. Outside, a family of deer was crossing their backyard, moving cautiously through the lengthening shadows. I need time, she said quietly, before I can even think about forgiving him, before I can even look at him again. I need time. Take all the time you need, Michael said. We both will. His phone buzzed. Another message from David. Dad, it's been 4 days. Can we please talk? Michael looked at the message for a long moment, then typed, Your wife is leaving you. Maybe when you figure out why, we can talk. Until then, think about what you've done. Really think about it. He turned off his phone and went to stand beside his wife at the window, watching the deer disappear into the trees as darkness fell around them. 6 days after Michael kicked him out, David showed up at the house at 7 a.m. Michael was drinking coffee on the porch, watching the sunrise when he saw his son's car pull into the driveway. He didn't move, just watched as David got out and walked slowly up the path, looking smaller somehow, diminished. Dad, David said, stopping at the bottom of the porch steps. Can we talk? Your mother's still asleep. You want to talk? We talk out here, quietly. David nodded and sat on the steps, not presuming to come up to the porch. That was something, at least. He looked terrible. Unshaven, clothes wrinkled, eyes red-rimmed. Jessica left me, he said. Served me divorce papers yesterday. She's claiming irreconcilable differences and emotional cruelty. I know. She told me she was filing. David's head snapped up. You knew? Did you tell her to do that? No. She made that decision herself after she found out what kind of man she married. What does that mean? Michael pulled out his phone and opened the screenshots. It means she found your other group chat, the one where you spend months planning how to humiliate your mother, where you and your in-laws discuss breaking her spirit, where you say it would be easier if we just weren't around. All the color drained from David's face. Dad, those messages are out of context. Really? What context makes watch her cry tonight acceptable? What context makes systematically undermining your mother's confidence forgivable? I was venting. I was frustrated. Everyone complains about their parents. Not like that, Michael said, his voice hard. Not with that level of calculation. Not with that much cruelty. You planned this, David, for months. You sought advice on how to hurt us. That's not venting. That's malice. David put his head in his hands. I didn't mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? Explain it to me. Make me understand how my son, the boy I raised to be better than me, turned into someone who gets entertainment from his mother's pain. Silence. Long, painful silence. Finally, David looked up, and there were tears in his eyes. But Michael couldn't tell if they were genuine or performative. I felt suffocated, David said. Every time I made a decision, you and Mom had opinions. Every time Jessica and I tried to do things our way, there was commentary. I felt like I was still a child, still needing approval, and I hated it. So you decided to destroy your mother's confidence? That was your solution? Richard said, Richard doesn't matter. Michael's voice rose, and he forced himself to lower it. Richard is not your father. He has no stake in your well-being. He was using you, David. They all were. They saw a young man desperate for validation, and they turned you into their puppet. That's not fair, isn't it? Think about it. Really think. Did they ever encourage you to talk to us? To have an honest conversation about boundaries? Or did they constantly tell you that we were the problem, that we needed to be put in our place? David was quiet, his jaw working. You want to talk about suffocation? Michael continued. Your mother calls you once a week. We have dinner once a month. We've never dropped by unannounced. We've respected your marriage, your space, your independence. But somehow, in your mind, that became suffocation, because someone convinced you that any parental involvement was control. I just wanted them to respect me, David said, his voice breaking. Jessica's family, they're successful, connected, sophisticated. I wanted to be part of that world. I wanted them to see me as an equal. And to do that, you had to make us seem small, emotional, weak. You had to betray us to buy their approval. David's tears were flowing freely now. I'm sorry. Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize what I was doing. I didn't see how far I'd gone. Did you enjoy it? Michael asked quietly. That night, in our kitchen, when your mother was crying in the next room and you were making them laugh, did you enjoy it? David opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Yes, he whispered. God help me, yes. For those few minutes, I felt powerful, like I was in control, like I mattered to them. And I'm so ashamed. Dad, I'm so ashamed. It was the first honest thing David had said, and Michael felt something crack in his chest. His son, his broken, lost son. Good, Michael said. You should be ashamed. What you did was unforgivable. So that's it? You're done with me? I didn't say that. I said what you did was unforgivable. That doesn't mean we won't eventually forgive you. But David, this isn't something you can fix with an apology. You need to understand what drove you to this. You need to figure out why you value the approval of people who don't really love you over the people who do. I don't know how to do that. Therapy would be a start. Real therapy, not just a few sessions to placate us. Deep work on why you feel the need to humiliate the people who love you to impress people who don't. David nodded, wiping his face with his sleeve. Can I see Mom, please? I need to apologize to her. No. Dad, please. She's not ready. David, you broke something in her. She looks at photos of you as a child and she cries because she doesn't understand where that child went. She blames herself, thinks she must have done something wrong to make you hate her so much. I don't hate her. Your actions say otherwise. And until you can prove through sustained change that you actually love and respect her, you don't get access to her. You don't get to hurt her again just because you're feeling guilty. When can I see her? Michael stood up, looking down at his son. When you've done the work. When you can explain to me why you did what you did. Really explain it, not just give me excuses. When you can show me that you've cut ties with the people who encouraged you to treat us like this. When you can demonstrate that you understand the depth of what you've done. Then we'll talk about you seeing your mother. That could take months. It took you months to plan hurting her. It'll take time to heal the damage you caused. David stood up too, unsteady on his feet. I lost everything. Jessica, my marriage, you and Mom, my home, everything. Yes, Michael said simply. You did. Those are consequences. Learn from them. Dad, I'm your son. Don't you love me anymore? Michael looked at this man who was his child, who carried his DNA and his name and none of his values, and felt a crushing sadness. I love you, he said quietly. I will always love you, but I don't like you very much right now. And more importantly, I don't trust you. Love without trust is just pain waiting to happen. You want back in our lives? Earn the trust back. Prove that you've changed. Prove that we matter to you as more than targets for your cruelty. How do I do that? Figure it out. That's part of growing up, taking responsibility, not expecting your parents to fix everything for you. David stood there for a long moment, looking lost and young and broken. Then he nodded and walked back to his car. He paused before getting in. I really am sorry, he called back. I believe you're sorry you got caught, Michael said. I believe you're sorry you lost everything. I'm not sure yet if you're sorry for what you actually did. That's what you need to figure out. David drove away, and Michael sat back down with his coffee, now cold. Behind him, he heard the front door open. Sarah stepped out onto the porch, wrapped in her bathrobe. I heard the car, she said. Was that David? Yes. Did you let him in? No. She sat down beside him, and they watched the sun continue its climb into a cloudy sky. Good, she said quietly. I'm not ready. I know. Do you think he'll actually change? Michael thought about his son's tears, about the shame in his voice, about the devastation in his eyes. He thought about the messages, the cruelty, the calculated nature of it all. I don't know, he said honestly. I hope so, but hope isn't enough. He has to choose to change. We can't do it for him. Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm tired, Michael. I'm tired of hurting. I know, me too. They sat together as morning broke fully around them. Two people who had given everything to their child and were now learning how to exist in the aftermath of that child's betrayal. The world kept turning, the birds kept singing, and somewhere out there, their son was driving away, carrying the weight of his choices. Whether he would ever truly understand that weight, whether he would ever genuinely change, remained to be seen. But for now, Michael and Sarah had each other, and that perhaps would have to be enough. Epilogue. 3 months later, February brought snow to their neighborhood, transforming everything into a clean white landscape that felt like possibility. The kind of heavy, wet snow that clung to tree branches and power lines, that muffled sound and made the world feel smaller, quieter, more intimate. Michael was shoveling the driveway when he saw the car pull up. Not David's car. His son had sold that weeks after the divorce, unable to afford the payments alone, but a modest rental sedan, the kind you get when you're rebuilding your life from scratch. David got out slowly, carefully, like someone who'd been injured and was still learning to move without pain. And Michael noticed immediately that something was different. His son looked better, not just healthier, though he'd clearly been eating properly and sleeping more. There was something else. The arrogance was gone. The defensive set to his shoulders had softened. His eyes, when they met Michael's, were clear and focused, but also uncertain. Humble. It was the first time Michael had seen genuine humility in his son's face in years, maybe decades. David was carrying a folder under his arm, worn leather, the kind professionals use for important documents. He wore a simple sweater and jeans, no designer labels, no obvious attempts to impress. His hair was longer than usual, slightly unkempt, like he'd been focusing on more important things than appearances. Dad, David said, stopping several feet away at the end of the driveway. He didn't presume to come closer, didn't try to cross the invisible boundary that had been established 3 months ago. I know I should have called. I can leave if you want. But I was hoping I could talk to you and Mom. If she's willing, if you're both willing, I understand if you're not. Michael leaned on his shovel, studying his son with the careful attention of someone who'd been fooled before and wouldn't let it happen again. He looked for signs of manipulation, for the performance, for the mask, but all he saw was exhaustion and something that looked like genuine remorse. You've been quiet for 3 months, Michael said carefully. No calls, no texts after that first night. Complete silence. That was intentional? Your choice? Yes, David said, nodding. My therapist, Dr. Chen, she's been incredible. She suggested it. She said I needed to do the work without trying to manage your reactions to it. That I needed to really face what I'd done without trying to fix it immediately or control how you felt about it. She said if I tried to rush back to force forgiveness, I'd just be doing another version of what I'd always done, trying to control the narrative, trying to make myself feel better instead of actually becoming better. Michael raised his eyebrows. That was surprisingly self-aware, and the fact that David was seeing a therapist twice a week, he must have mentioned that in his explanation, or maybe Jessica had told them, that was more than Michael had expected. Smart therapist. She's been good. I see her twice a week, and I've been going to a men's group for guys who have issues with anger and control and masculinity. Michael raised his eyebrows. That was unexpected and promising. Come inside, he said. I'll see if Mom's ready to see you. If she's not, you respect that. Understood? Completely understood. Sarah was in the kitchen when they came in. She froze when she saw David, her hand going to her throat, an automatic gesture of protection. Hi, Mom, David said softly. I know I don't deserve your time, but I was hoping you'd let me talk to you, both of you. I have some things I need to say. Sarah looked at Michael, who nodded slightly. She took a deep breath and sat down at the kitchen table. Okay, she said. Talk. David sat across from them, the kitchen table between them like a negotiating table in a hostage situation, and that's what this felt like in many ways. They were all hostages to what had happened, to the damage that had been done, trying to figure out if there was any way forward that didn't involve more pain. He placed the folder on the table, but didn't open it yet. His hands were shaking slightly, and he clasped them together to still them. I've been working with Dr. Chen, my therapist, for 3 months now, David began, his voice steady but quiet. Twice a week, sometimes 3 times when things got really hard, we've been unpacking everything. Why I did what I did, what was going on in my head, what I was really looking for. And I wanted to share some of what I've learned with you, if you're willing to listen, if you can bear to hear it. We're listening, Michael said, though his voice was guarded. Sarah said nothing, but she nodded slightly, giving David permission to continue. David opened the folder and pulled out several pages of handwritten notes. The writing was cramped, dense, the work of someone who'd spent hours putting thoughts to paper. I've written this all down because Dr. Chen said I needed to be clear and specific, not just offer vague apologies that don't mean anything. She said words like, "I'm sorry," are meaningless without understanding, without genuine remorse backed by insight. So here's what I understand now. He took a shaky breath, clearly struggling to maintain his composure. I was struggling with my identity, with who I was supposed to be. I felt like I was stuck between two worlds. The world I grew up in, with you two, with your values about family and emotional connection and putting relationships first, and the world I married into, Jessica's family's world, where success and status and control and appearances matter more than feelings, where vulnerability is weakness and emotion is something to be managed, not expressed. He looked up at them, his eyes red-rimmed. And instead of finding a way to integrate both, or to choose my own path that honored what was good in both worlds, I tried to completely reject you. I tried to remake myself as the kind of son-in-law Richard and Brenda would respect. And to do that, I had to convince myself that everything about how I was raised was wrong. Weak, embarrassing, old-fashioned. Sarah's eyes were filling with tears, but she didn't interrupt. She needed to hear this, Michael realized. She needed to understand that this wasn't about her failings as a mother, but about David's failures as a son. The night of the fight, David continued, his voice getting rougher. I deliberately planned to hurt you, Mom. Richard had been pushing me for weeks to establish dominance, to show that I was a man who didn't let his mother control him emotionally. The fact that you never tried to control me didn't matter to them. In their worldview, in the worldview I was trying to adopt, any emotional closeness with a mother past childhood is weakness. Any man who cares about his mother's feelings is a mama's boy, is pathetic, is less than. So I planned to embarrass you, to make you cry in front of them, to prove that I was strong and you were fragile. And when I did it, when I saw you run from the room sobbing, I felt powerful, important, like I finally mattered to them. His voice broke, and that feeling lasted about 5 minutes before it turned to ashes. But by then, the damage was done. Why? Sarah asked, her first word since he'd started talking. Why did their approval matter more than mine? Because I felt like I already had your approval, David said. I took you for granted. I knew you loved me unconditionally, so I didn't value it. I thought unconditional love meant you'd accept anything from me. I didn't understand that unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional acceptance of cruel behavior. He pulled out another sheet. I've made a list of every way I hurt you, every message, every comment, every dismissal. I've written down what I imagine each one must have felt like for you, and I've been sitting with that pain, trying to really understand what I put you through. He slid the paper across the table. Sarah picked it up with trembling hands and began to read. Michael watched her face crumple as she went through David's detailed accounting of his cruelty and his attempts to understand its impact. I know this doesn't fix anything, David said. I know I can't take back the pain. But I needed you to see that I understand, that I've actually thought about what I did, not just about how it affected me, but about what it did to you. Have you talked to Richard and Brenda? Michael asked. Marcus, the others in those chats? I blocked all of them, changed my number. I've completely cut contact. And Jessica? David's face fell. The divorce is final. She sent me a letter through her lawyer. She said she hopes I get better, but she can't be part of my life while I do that. I don't blame her. I became someone she couldn't respect, and she was right to leave. He pulled out one more paper. This is from Dr. Chen. She's willing to meet with you if you want, to answer any questions you have about my treatment. I've signed a release giving her permission to talk to you about my progress. I want you to be able to verify that I'm actually doing the work, that this isn't just a performance. Michael took the paper, impressed despite himself. This level of transparency, of vulnerability, was something the old David would never have considered. I'm not asking you to forgive me today, David said. I'm not asking to move back in or to pretend everything is okay. I'm just asking for a chance to prove that I'm changing, that I'm becoming someone who deserves to be your son again. What does that look like? Sarah asked quietly. What are you proposing? Maybe we could meet once a month. Here, somewhere public, wherever you're comfortable. I can update you on my progress. You can ask me anything you want. And if, over time, you see real change, maybe eventually we can start to rebuild trust. And if we say no? Michael asked. If we say we need more time? Then I respect that and keep doing the work anyway, because this isn't about getting you back. It's about becoming a better person. You deserve a better son than I've been. Whether or not I ever get to be that for you, I need to try. Silence fell over the kitchen. Snow continued to fall outside the windows, soft and steady. Finally, Sarah spoke. I need to think about this. I need to process. Can you give us a week? Of course. Take whatever time you need. David stood up, leaving the folder on the table. Everything I've written is in there. My therapy notes, my realizations, my apologies. Even if you decide you don't want to see me again, I wanted you to have it, to know that I understood what I did. He walked to the door, then turned back. Mom, I love you. I'm sorry it took losing everything to remember that. I'm sorry I ever made you doubt it. Sarah's tears were flowing freely now, but she nodded. David left quietly, and they heard his car pull away. Michael and Sarah sat at the table for a long time, the folder between them like a bridge over deep water. What do you think? Michael finally asked. I think he's trying, Sarah said. I think maybe, for the first time, he's actually trying. But I don't know if trying is enough. I don't know if I can trust him again. You don't have to decide today. Do you trust him? Michael thought about it carefully. I think I believe he's horrified by what he did. I think I believe he's in pain. But trust? That's something he has to earn back slowly. Very slowly. Sarah picked up the folder and opened it, beginning to read through David's painstaking documentation of his own cruelty and his journey toward understanding it. Michael watched her face, seeing the war between hope and hurt playing out in her expressions. I want to try, she said finally. I want to meet with him once a month, but I need you there. I can't do this alone. I'll be there, Michael promised, every time. And if he backslides, if he reverts to who he was, then we walk away. We've proven we can do that. We can do it again if we have to. Sarah nodded and continued reading. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the old wounds of the earth with white possibility. Inside, two parents sat with the slim hope that their son might finally be finding his way back to them. But this time, they knew better than to assume. This time, they would watch, wait, and protect themselves while leaving the door open just a crack. Because sometimes the hardest lesson a child learns is the cost of disrespect. And sometimes, if they're lucky and willing to do the work, they get a chance to learn it before it's too late. Whether David would fully grasp that lesson, whether he would continue the hard work of transformation, remained to be seen. But for the first time in months, there was a small glimmer of possibility. And that, Michael thought as he held his wife's hand across the table, was something. Not everything, not yet, but something. It would have to be enough for now.